everybody, welcome back to the Joe Pop Podcast. And I've got a guest of mine that I have been trying to get on for a while. A little bit of reluctance, but finally he's like, probably, let me just shut Joe up and just jump on board for a little bit. So this is Curtis Pape. Curtis Pape, say hey.
Hey guys, I'm like that elusive Pokemon that you just can't catch.
So this is episode number 11. And from what I understand, I was telling Curtis, if you bust number 10, I think you're actually in the top 5% of all podcasts. I'll have to Google that. I'm sure one of you will probably fact check it for me. So let me know what you find out. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. And make sure you share. I appreciate you guys' support. And we're going to get this baby done. So I want to be careful not to back into anything. All right, Curtis.
Man.
Today's the day, man.
Thanks for having me on, man. It's my pleasure.
Well, it's good to finally get you on board.
Woo.
All right, so we're backing up. We're not going to hit the bus. All right, buddy. So we have known each other for, gosh, dude, how long have we known each other for? It's been not a trick question.
Probably about 8 years.
You sure it's not longer than that?
It might be 10.
Yeah, 8 or 10?
Might be 8 to 10 years, yeah.
So
grateful for that.
Absolutely.
Grateful for me and your family and what y'all mean to ours.
Yeah, it's good. We're both adopted families, and we both have quite. Dude, I love this automatic gate you got.
Isn't that incredible?
Nerding out on the gate. I got to get a gate at my house. So
great. It's a DIY project. DIY means a little bit less out of my pocket. So.
Hey, it's working. So
yep.
And we'll see where this cat's gonna go.
Should turn straight in, back it in.
Okay, there he goes.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I mean, the biggest connection I know that you and me have is our families.
Yeah.
And the fact that we have both served in the Army and similar duty stations. But before we get into all that, the good stuff, where does all this kick off, man? Where were you born at?
Well, I was born in Tucson, Arizona, and raised by both my parents out in the desert. My mom used to lock my older brother and I out of the house. She'd kick us out because we were a little too rowdy in the house, and so she'd kick us out, lock the door, and we'd go build forts and antagonize my little brother and little sister. So that was kind of our childhood.
No, that's awesome. So when we're talking desert, are we? I mean, I'm thinking Tucson. I'm thinking Arizona flat. Or are we talking Arizona desert mountains? What?
Yeah, Arizona flat is pretty much how I would describe it. It was the prickly pear cactus, the roadrunners, tumbleweeds. I remember, not to skip ahead, but bringing my wife home for the first time and watching a tumbleweed go across the road, and I was like, this is it. This is the best picture of how I grew up and where I grew up that you can get. So that's it, yeah.
I remember, and it was years ago. I mean, I think we're talking 10, 15 years ago. So, you know, I always, listening to talk radio or to, NPR on occasion, don't shoot me. But I remember there's somebody who had featured a story. There was some guy that was out there, and he was in New Mexico, I think it was, and he would nab up tumbleweeds. And he was selling small tumbleweeds on eBay for $20 a pop. And then he was selling the big ones for like 40 to 50.
Yeah.
And the dude was actually making crazy money off of it.
Wow.
So it's like, are you serious?
Wow.
Tumbleweeds. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we had the scorpions in the bars of soap. We had...
Oh, I remember.
Yeah, scorpions in lollipops. Prickly pear jelly. That was kind of in and around all the malls that we used to frequent. So
holy cow, yeah, that is funny.
Crazy.
Now, when I think geography-wise, Tucson is north or south? It's south, isn't it, on I-10?
Yep, south.
So you're like almost right on the border.
Right on the border. We would actually, I want to say it was probably about an hour and a half, and we could be at the border, and we would go across the border on occasion to eat some tacos or something like that, and do some shopping. But that was as close to the border as we were, and it was great.
Oh,
it was
I
really
imagine.
sweet.
So, so 2 brothers, 1 sister?
2 brothers, 1 sister,
right.
an older brother, and we kind of paired up. It was me and my older brother against my younger sister and younger brother, which I still feel bad about to this day, and I still apologize to my sister because, man, we were pretty ornery.
So, okay, so you're obviously growing up out in the desert. What was school like? Were you a good student? Did you suck? Were you a good athlete? What?
Yeah, I was a good student. I would say I got minimum grades to pass for my parents was a C. They wanted a C or better, and so I got straight C's on my report cards. I was homeschooled all the way up until high school, and then high school we had the choice of whether or not we were going to go to a public school or whether or not we were going to stay homeschooled. And man, I was chomping at the bit to be able to get out into the public arena, and so I took that route, went to public school, and I really enjoyed it. Jumped into soccer. I'd been into AYSO soccer growing up, and jumped right into high school soccer. Played high school soccer all 4 years.
Okay.
And that was something else, playing high school soccer in that 110, 115 degree heat.
Oh, yeah.
And man, just making sure that we were hydrated. I think still to this day, I just absolutely love feeling that hot sun on my skin. So that's something I miss, because now I'm in Florida. So,
You know, one thing that whenever I made the switch from security forces to RPAs, remotely piloted aircraft. Yeah, any acronyms. Make sure you're sounding off. That way we're not throwing off any civilians. But remotely piloted aircraft, Reapers, Preds, all that stuff. The time we spent out in Vegas, out in the desert, was so nice, because even though there wasn't any, there was no humidity, and there was no freaking bugs.
Yeah.
You know? Oh my gosh.
There was nothing.
It was awesome.
No mosquitoes, no biting flies.
Yeah.
It was great.
I mean, obviously it sucks having like a hot blow dryer going in your face all the time, which is what it felt like, but still pretty cool.
Pretty sweet.
So as a student, you homeschool your kids, we homeschool ours.
Yeah.
I've got my oldest son that would take all day to do his school.
Yeah.
And then I had Alec, who would get his stuff done by noon, and then he was outside,
right.
Out in the woods. What kind of student were you? Did you get your stuff done? Did you kind of like take all day to do your stuff?
Now, 2 different stories, because homeschooling, it took me all day, all weekend to get it done. I really don't think... Are you serious? Yeah, it was rough, man. Homeschooling was rough. But once I got into public school, it was good. I did get my school done, again, just kind of to get that C. And I'll tell you, because my senior year came around, and it started me thinking, am I capable of more? And so I challenged myself to see if I could be that straight A student. And the last semester, I got straight A's. So guys, I would say I'm a straight A student.
I would say you're a sandbagger.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
That about sums it up. So
holy cow.
I can do the bare minimum when it's required, but I can also be a higher achiever. So.
I mean, at this point, I'm sure your mom didn't care. She was glad you graduated. What did your mom say about this?
So I was the standard in my family. I was the standard for hard children. My mom used to tell her sister-in-law that if she could raise a Curtis, then they could raise their kids. I was the standard for that kind of thing. And it wasn't like any kind of like over the top trouble that I got into, but I was a hard kid. I gave my parents a run for their money. My parents were good parents. They put me in church, and so we all went to church every Sunday, sometimes Wednesday. I grew up reading the Bible, but man, Sunday school was a challenge for me. I came back with full pockets. I loved to steal. And,
are you serious?
And there were
Sticky Finger Curtis.
Yes, everything was a 5-finger discount to me. And man, I still remember my Sunday school teacher having to remove the doorknob to get me out of the bathroom because I would lock myself in the bathroom and play cars with the cars that I had stolen from my brother. And so I was a challenge. But
holy cow! After
man,
this podcast, I'm never gonna look. I'll never look at you the same, man.
All that to say, yeah, I think I turned out all right, and I would attribute that to all the things that the Lord has done in my life from the time that I accepted Him, probably about 7 or 8 years old. He has been pursuing me, and it's more like a Jonah story, I feel like.
Right.
In the Bible, you have this character, Jonah, who is called by the Lord to do something that the Lord has asked him to do, and he turns his back and he tries to run from the Lord. And we all know that the Lord is sovereign and sees you wherever you go and can follow you wherever you go.
Yeah.
And is kind regardless. And after accepting Him, I feel like there were so many times that I ran from the Lord, and the Lord pursued me in His kindness and goodness, and in His following of me, He's brought me to a different place where I'm at now. So He is a good God to follow me through those hardships. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what did your dad do?
My dad was a computer programmer.
Okay.
And he was really good at what he did. He worked for IBM. And one of the things I remember most about my dad, and still to this day, he works himself to the bone. He works so hard. And my dad, super respectable, 4 of us kids, my mom, and he was the only worker in the family. And so he provided for our entire family everything we had. We didn't want for anything looking back. We took hand-me-downs from each other, and that was something that we celebrated. I remember telling my brother, as soon as you grow out of that sweatshirt, it's mine. I want that thing. And so, but we didn't want for anything. And so, my dad worked really hard, and my mom worked really hard all the same, because she homeschooled all 4 of us.
Okay.
And was involved in some extracurricular things at the church. And so both of my parents worked hard to care well for us. And so I'm very appreciative of them for doing that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, it's always, my mom pretty much stayed home with me, and
Yeah.
Mary, she's always stayed home with the kiddos. But, and on today's economy, it's doable, it's possible, but it takes a lot of planning.
That's hard,
And it's definitely not an easy task. But all right, so moving on, you graduate high school. What is the grand plan for Mr. Curtis Pape going out of high school?
Man, my grand plan was to not be in school any longer. So
college wasn't a thing.
I'd had about enough of it. One of the schools that I was entertaining had offered me a scholarship if I were to go play soccer for them. And I was grateful for that, but again, I really didn't want to be in school. I didn't want to be in the books anymore. And so I talked to the recruiters, and man, to this day, I wish I'd talked to more recruiters. I think the Army was the first ones I talked to, and just bit on that first hook that dangled in front of me. But but I did not want to be in the books. I wanted to do something physical. I always loved being outside. I loved working with my hands, and had taken the ASVAB test and was told, man, that test is like a test that tests your military like aptitude, what you're able to place into, what jobs and skills you're able to work at in the military. And I scored really high on it, and they had told me, you can pick any job you want on this list. And I said, I want to be infantry. They said,
what year is this? I'm sorry.
This is 2002.
Okay, gotcha.
And they said, I'm sorry, what did you say? You wanted to be infantry?
Yeah.
And I said, yes, that's what I want to do. Hands down, I want to be the boots on the ground. I want to be kicking indoors. I want to be doing this kind of exciting stuff. And they said, well, if that's what you want, that's fine. We'll sell that to you. But, you know, thinking back, I probably would have picked something that would have transitioned a little bit better into a civilian career. But I was young, and I really don't have a lot of regrets, because I really feel like I am the man I am now because of what the Lord's brought me to. But I didn't really seek Him out in that decision, which is one of the things I regret. But I remember coming home and telling my grandma and grandpa, who were my role models, the choice that I'd made. And I remember my grandpa telling me that I was stupid. And he turned around and walked out the door.
No way, did he really?
He did, yeah, he did. And he came back later. I don't remember him apologizing for it, but he was a little bit kinder and gentler to me about how he expressed his opinion of what I'd chosen to do. So,
right. So let's rewind just a little bit. What inspired you to go infantry? Of all the things you could do, because I was the same way.
Yeah.
I transferred Navy to infantry, and the dude's like, dude, your scores, you can do all this other stuff.
Right.
And I'm like, nope.
Right.
You know, but so what inspired you to join the infantry of all things? Was that 9/11? Does it go further back?
Not really. Honestly, looking back, because 9/11 had happened, and I remember it vividly. And I had many guys that I served with that's what inspired them, and that's why they were there. But for me, it was purely I wanted an exciting future, and I wanted to go do exciting things. And being 18, I think maybe 19, all I wanted to do was hold a gun and shoot it. And that's really one of the things that I wanted to do. And because I was willing to sign up for 4 years, I got the full college bonus, and I thought, okay, that secures my future a little bit. And I even remember going down the line when I was in my basic training, and they asked why you were here, and my response was for college. And I got a world of hurt that came my way for answering that way. But again, I was in a little bit of a rougher environment then. But when I signed up with a contract to be able to try out for the Rangers and to go airborne. And so I got a few extra things thrown in when I signed up, but it was purely to have a little bit of excitement in my life.
Gotcha. So what is your 9/11 story? Because I remember coming up on the anniversary here.
Yeah.
What's your story?
Yeah, I remember getting ready for school, and I remember my brother and we shared a room, and I remember we would turn on the radio, and we would listen to the radio every morning, whatever music was on, and can't say it was necessarily approved by my parents, but we would turn the radio, And we were listening, and it was just people talking, and we started listening to why it was just people talking, and there wasn't music on at that point. And I remember hearing about the 2 planes that had hit, and I remember going into school that day, and school was pretty much shut down, and we just had a TV in front of us, and we watched the events unfold. And at that point in my life, we had transitioned from a public school to a private Christian school for reasons that my parents thought it best to do,
Okay.
and I would agree with that. But man, we spent some time in prayer for the families and for the firefighters and the events unfolding. But it was a pretty dramatic day.
Oh yeah.
Pretty dramatic day for us.
Okay,
Yeah.
so fast forward, you're at Sand Hill,
Yeah, Sand.
getting ready to go Sand Hill,
Sand Hill, good old Sand Hill.
and do your time at the Purgatory, 30th
Yes.
AG.
Yes.
I hate that place. Oh my gosh.
These are things that I haven't thought about in a long time. 30th AG to me is like when you look up depression in the dictionary and it says see also 30th AG.
Oh, yeah.
That's it.
Well, and it's
And
funny
that
because
was a hard time of waiting.
because everybody that goes infantry
Yeah.
is going through 30th AG.
Yeah.
And nobody has a good story about it. I mean,
Right?
beat me,
Yeah.
beast me,
Yeah.
smoke me, make my
Yeah.
eyes bleed, but all of that is better than 30th AG.
Yeah.
How many weeks were you stuck in?
I don't remember.
Dude, I was like,
it was a
I want to say
long time.
2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think it was probably 2 or 3 lifetimes for me. That's what it felt like.
It did. Especially when
Every
you're
day.
when you're wanting to get in there and start learning,
Right.
to take care of business. But-
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway,
Yeah.
so you had a Ranger contract.
I had a Ranger contract,
Okay. What happens?
airborne contract. I remember one of the things that stood out to me, without fast forwarding, was I remember getting on that bus to go to basic training, and I remember meeting the drill sergeant for the first time, and that get off the bus, this is my bus, get off the bus, and just the terror that everyone else was feeling, and the pure elation that I was feeling, because I was thinking, I have arrived. This is what I wanted. I wanted this. I felt like I was living inside a movie, and for me, it was the greatest thing ever. I feel like every time I got smoked, which was a term for just, the physical punishment that was enacted on us, I was enthusiastic about it. I was grateful to be there, and it was just my playground. And so, I really enjoyed it. All that to say, we get to this point where, now we've finished our basic training and we're fixing to go into what's called AIT, Advanced Infantry Training, or Advanced Individual Training. I can't remember. But they told us, all right, it's time for this. It's time for you to start learning the skills of an infantryman. And I was pumped about it. They made us go to attention. And then they said about face. And we turned around. And they said about face. And we turned back around. And they said, welcome to AIT.
Yep.
Start beating your face. And so we assumed the position and started getting smoked again. And so I was like, this is great. So
I remember because it was that
Yeah.
thing. Hey, basic training is now done. And pardon my language, not a damn thing is changing.
Yes,
and it was, literally,
Yep.
started doing push-ups. A couple of other guys came in that were retraining. We had like one NCO that rolled in, and sure enough,
Yeah.
it was 4 more weeks
Man.
of the same old
The
thing.
same
and it's
hell.
like, I was always getting smoked because I would always crack a smile.
Yeah.
So freaking drill sergeant, instead of being the
Yeah.
gray man, I became smiling.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my.
I specialized as the gray man. That was me. I specialized as that, and that came out a little bit further into my career when I was in Ranger School, and I was actually stationed at 6th Ranger Training Battalion here in Florida, and I was probably about 2 weeks in before they actually realized that I worked here, and they were meant to give me special attention, which meant things should have been harder for me, but because I had remained gray and under the radar, that I had 2 weeks where I didn't get that special attention. So things got a little bit harder after that. But
all right, so you finish up AIT.
Yeah, and then I ran into an issue at the end of basic training. I was loading a machine gun rack into the back of a deuce and a half, a 2.5 ton truck that would cart us around, cart the equipment around, and it has a little lip on the back of it, and so we were sliding this big case of 240 machine guns into the back, and the guys in the truck yanked on it real hard, and my hand was under it, and so it just smashed my hand.
Ooh.
And crushed 2 of the bones in my knuckles, and so that put me into a cast. But because all we really had left was a road march, they let me finish basic training.
Right.
But I got held over for probably about 2 months in basic training, holdover.
Oh.
So I stayed in that basic training environment for an extra 2 months, which was a little rough. I had more privileges than the little, students first coming in, but it was a little rough. And so after that healed up, I went to airborne school, which was my first time of kind of real freedom in months. And honestly, I let that go to my head, and I didn't start planning for what was coming next, because airborne school is a very short school. It was maybe 4 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, I think it was.
Three weeks.
This ground training, then you have tower training, and then air training, basically. And so 3 weeks that I should have been exercising that hand and getting back into shape, because I hadn't been doing push-ups other than the minimal PT that we did. I hadn't been doing pull-ups, which I found out was going to be a new requirement at the place I was going next.
Okay.
And so I wasn't prepared for what came next. So when the Ranger Indoctrination Program came next, I wasn't ready for it. I ran through and failed the initial PT requirements the first go round.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't give many opportunities to recycle and retake it or retry out for it. But I pled my case and went before a board, and they gave me special permission to retake it. And so I spent a lot of time training. They made sure of that.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, went and tried out again. This time it was I want to say about 3 weeks. It's a 3-week tryout, 3 or 4 week tryout, and made it all the way to the end, and had hurt my ankle, and so I made it all the way through one of the last benchmarks, which was Coal Range, which is a very difficult thing to get through. But I made it through Coal Range, and the last thing on the agenda was just a road march with an undetermined pace, undetermined distance, and you couldn't run. And I found that difficult, so I made probably what I assume was maybe 4 or 5 miles in, and I ended up getting on the bus. Ooh. And didn't make it through there. But I look back on that time as a teaching point to me, because there was a guy that I served with and a guy that was there with me, and he had a broken ankle and he did make it. And so for me, that was one of those things, was recognizing that the mind can be stronger than the body.
Yeah.
And I took that with me to the next place that I went. And again, that was one of those life lessons for me that I feel like made me harder and stronger. And really, I thank the Lord for that teaching moment, because that's really gone with me into life too. So.
Well, and you know, it's funny you mention that, because scuba school, pre-scuba rolled around while I was there, and I'd always wanted to get my scuba bubble, but you know, for being lazy and all that stuff, I hopped. They said, hey, next Monday,
right?
I should have already been in shape for it. Yeah. But hey, next Monday is pre-scuba. If you want to go, show up at the dive locker at this time in the morning. Yeah. And I did. I hopped in there, and I tell you what, I think maybe 2 days into it, I was out of shape. I was sucking pretty bad. Yeah. And I remember, I'm like, I think my sister-in-law was getting married. I just had a lot of queepy stuff that was involved in it, and I should have just sucked it up and did it. But I remember, as I was going to, ring the bell or to basically say, hey, I'm done, I remember a guy from First Bat telling me, he says, hey, you quit this, you'll quit everything the rest of your freaking life. Yeah. And I didn't pay a whole lot of heed to it, but you know what? The lesson I learned was, he's right. If I'm not careful, I'm going to hit the easy button. Right. And so I carried that into my Air Force career. Yeah. And that was the last thing I ever quit, because it does. If you're not watching, if you're not careful, it'll become a habit pattern. Yeah. So, but okay, so so you end up getting on the bus.
And honestly, it's funny that you mentioned pre-scuba, because I had an experience with pre-scuba too. And I made it through scuba, but I told them I'm not going through scuba school. I made it through the pre-scuba, but I don't want my bubble. So they said, look at this, man, the Lord was kind, and he gave me a lot of opportunities for schools. And I had my airborne school, I had ranger school, I had sniper school, I had jump master school, and they said, this is it. You need scuba school. You need to top that off. We'll get that bubble, and then one or two other ones, and you're going to be good, right? You're going to go from top 1% to whatever, the top, 0.001%. And they tried to sell me on it, but I wasn't about holding my breath that long. So I decided, I can do without that bubble. I can do without that extra incentive on my paycheck. So I told them no on that. That was my limit. So
all right. So we're getting on the bus. Rip is now in the rearview mirror, so to speak. Yep. No pun intended. Yeah. How do you? What happens next? How do you end up getting to the 6th?
Yeah. And so. I was kind of disappointed getting on that bus, because they told me there was coffee and donuts on that bus, and there was no coffee and donuts on that bus. But no, the Lord, again, the Lord knows things ahead of time, and I can see His providential hand in where I ended up. And so I got put on what's called worldwide status, and
really?
Yeah, and so it was needs of the Army. That contract that I had to do airborne school, and then ranger school, and then be placed in 1st, 2nd, or 3rd Battalion, that got tore up because I did not fulfill my end of the contract, and I did not complete those schools, and so I got placed on what's called worldwide status. And so some people were going to Italy, and that was my hope, was to go to Italy and still be on airborne. But the Lord had other plans, and just me, no one else on worldwide status got that slot. But 6th Ranger Training Battalion said that they needed one person there, and so they put in that request, and it ended up falling down to me. And so they sent me down down to Florida, and
Nice.
And I ended up here at 6th Ranger Training Battalion and came in on airplane, and nobody here knew where I was supposed to be. Nobody here. The guys waiting at the desk to pick up the airmen coming in for the Air Force base that 6RTB is stationed on had no clue that there was a training facility out in the middle of the woods, and so it took about 2 days for them to find my home.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So I was lost, and nobody knew where I was supposed to be, and so a couple days later I got picked up and found this new home that I had, and the special
crazy.
people I'd be working with. So
I remember it was First Sergeant Massingale. He was an old guy that had jumped into Grenada, really squared away guy, and I remember him giving me directions to get there, and I remember driving,
yeah,
and it's like, holy cow!
Yeah.
And before you know it,
yeah,
the sky opens up, the tree line opens up, and there's a freaking Ranger tab there, and I think back then there was an old scroll there, and it's like, okay,
yeah,
I guess I'm here.
yeah.
But I mean, it was out in the middle of freaking nowhere. All right, so you get there, you finally find it,
Yeah.
Which is an accomplishment.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Man, I feel like I was a little bit lost in there. That was now my new home, and so the older, more experienced guys that were now in charge of me made sure to introduce me to my new home, and in every painful way that they knew how to. But again, after doing that life for that period of time, I understand the way of breaking someone down to build them up and to teach respect, and so you can learn the ability to follow orders in the heat of the moment. And so I understand the way of things, but that was the new world that I got introduced to, and it was wild to know that one of the guys that I was in basic training with, long way back from the time that I was now, was actually there and had been there for probably about 6 months now, because he had gone straight through basic, straight through airborne, and then had failed out as well, put on worldwide status, but he didn't have that. He never got recycled, and he didn't have the cast or anything like that to get out of, and so he was there, and so I linked up with him and learned the ropes of the area, and had asked him and one of my other buddies there where a good church was in the area,
right?
Because it was my goal and my intention to find a good woman, and I knew a good woman would be found at church, and so I wanted to still seek the Lord in His house, and to find a future wife. And one of the things that, if I could back up for a little bit, one of the turning points in my life was actually there in that holdover point of being on worldwide status. And I was there for probably about a month and a half, waiting on orders. And I had someone that told me that the next place that I was going to would make sure to change me. They had asked me if I drank, and I said, not really. I don't really drink. Well, do you chase women? Not really. Well, don't worry about that. The next place you go is going to change you. And that put a fear in me that I knew who I was, and I'd been living out my parents' comfortable religion. And although I had accepted Christ at a young age, now I had this point in my life that it was up to me, and the Bible is clear about that, where Joshua says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And it was a decision that he had to make, and he challenged all the other individuals to make. And so that was my turning point, where it was my challenge of, as for me and my house, who am I going to serve? And so that was my turning point to really pursue the Lord and his goodness. And so when I got to 6 RTB, that was one of the things I wanted to do. Was I wanted to find a church, and I wanted to pursue the Lord deeper, and find a wife for myself. So
nice.
Yeah.
So you end up getting settled in.
Yeah.
You know, you forego the Matador.
Yes,
And
I did. Yes, I did. But it's not without its stories of my guys going there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
getting in trouble.
Holy
So,
cow!
yeah.
Every weekend,
Yeah.
it's like, guys, come
Woo-wee.
on. But so anyway, you end up getting established there.
Yeah.
How long before they actually send you to Ranger School?
It was pretty quick. I want to say it was probably about 6 months.
Okay.
Maybe it was 6 months.
I was there for 30 days,
Might have been.
maybe 60 days, and the first sergeant says, "Hey." No, it was because Mary. I was supposed to go to Germany,
Okay.
and I had mentioned on another podcast with a guy, Chuck Simpson,
Yeah.
what had happened, but I was able to get down to the 6 RTB, and it was all because my wife was pregnant with our oldest, and it was high risk already, and so they're already wanting to put me through Ranger School, and I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
my wife's
Yeah.
like 8 months pregnant. I can't go to Ranger School right now.
Right.
So unfortunately, I had to turn that down. But
Right.
nice. So 6 months, you roll into Ranger School.
Yeah.
How was that?
It may have been sooner, because I remember them telling me, thanks for volunteering to go to that, and it was more of a voluntold type of deal, but it was, you will pass, and so yeah, again, I praise the Lord for him knowing what was in store, because as I think we'll dig into a little bit later, where I'm at now, there'd be no way that I could go to Ranger School. And so then it was just me. I was single. My family wasn't around there. I had just arrived at this duty station, and so there weren't a whole lot of friends. I wasn't really established. And so I thought, man, a new playground to play in? This is amazing. And I remember that this was like the greatest thing ever, that I was getting to play soldier, That being said, it wasn't without its trials. I remember, for those of you who don't know about Ranger School, it's a leadership course. It's a course that's designed to deprive you of food and sleep and encourage you towards leadership in those times of stress. And so that's one of the things they do, is that you get about on average 4 hours of sleep a night and about 2 meals a day. And so, towards the end, you are really sucking. And I remember digging an old Tabasco sauce, an MRE Tabasco sauce bottle, which, those are tiny, and it had about 2 drops left in it. And I remember drinking that and thinking, I just hit the jackpot, because the seal was still on it, which meant it's still good.
Right.
But the fact that it only had 2 drops in it meant it had been there for a long time. But that was good. I remember a couple instances of sleep deprivation where I would take a knee, and we would be regrouping, and then all of a sudden someone would be tapping me on the shoulder and say, "Hey stud, what you doing?" And this was an instructor, talking to me, and I would look at him and I would look around, and there was nobody around. And I was sitting there taking a knee all by myself. and it was just me and the instructor, and man, I knew I was in trouble then.
Oh, holy cow.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember talking about how I wished MREs were filled with nothing but the cheese packets, which now makes me want to throw up. But then I thought it was the greatest thing ever.
Oh,
so
yeah, the jalapeno cheese was
jalapeno
awesome.
cheese spread on that nasty
Cardboard,
bread. Yeah.
Cardboard cracker or whatever.
Oh, man.
Yeah, you definitely learn how to suck well.
Yeah.
Whenever you're...
You do, but man, praise God, I was a first time go, and like I said, I remained a
Really? On
gray
everything?
man. I had a few fails in leadership, but they try to give you one, and they try to give you a second one to redeem yourself if you fail. And so I was the first time go through all 3 phases.
Nice.
Which was great because I knew some guys that had been recycling each phase and some of those phases twice, and so I was grateful to get to spend 3 months and only 3 months doing it.
We had a guy, and I'm not going to mention his name. I don't even know where he is nowadays. Awesome guy, really nice guy. But he spent, and there's been fluctuations back and forth as to what they do with guys like this. But he was literally in Ranger School a whole year, and he'd come out of Alaska, and yeah, he had failed and recycled and failed and recycled. But you know what? I mean, the biggest thing is guys could make comments all day about this cat, about his, his cognitive abilities. But here's the fact of the matter: that dude didn't have any quit in him.
Right, his character, and that's the kind of guy that you really like. That's who you want to follow, is someone who is going to want to get the job done, no matter what it takes. Man,
so it was quite a testament.
Yeah.
All right, so you end up graduating Ranger School.
Yeah.
Come back to sunny Florida.
Yeah.
Well, you end up graduating in Florida, and how did that go?
That was good. That was really sweet to come back. But I had a new platoon sergeant, and I had a new team leader who was.
I'm sorry, E4, E5 at this point.
Yeah. So I was in E3, I think.
Okay.
I think I was in E3, came out of there, was in E4 for the minimum amount of time. So I was what they would call a tab D4, which was nice. I would have a little bit of rank basically on the other E4s.
They give you corporal?
No, they gave me specialist, but it was like a E4 to E5 type of thing.
Oh, okay.
So I went to the E5 board immediately with the tab, and they asked me why I felt like I should be in E5 if I'd only been in E4 for, man, I don't even know. It was like 6 months or something like that.
Right.
That I had been a team leader. But my sell was that these other team leaders that we had weren't worth their weight, and I could be a much better team leader than them. And man, I said some other things too, because you get coached on how to prepare for this board, and one of the things that they talk about is you need to know world news, you need to know local news, you need to have these Army manuals memorized, you need to be ready in every aspect. And I thought, okay, this is great. The day of, I'm going to read things that are happening in the world, right?
Right.
And so we have these first sergeants sitting in front of us, sergeant majors sitting in front of us, and these are guys, with a lot of experience, and I think at that point I didn't quite realize that. But one of the pieces of information that I gave them when they said, hey, do you know a little bit about what's happening in the world today? I said, some kid in China got their nose bit by a piranha that someone put in a drinking fountain. And that was the piece of news I gave them. That was the only piece of... world history that I gave them for that moment in time. And
what was the look on their faces?
They looked at each other, and I think it impressed them with my boldness. And so,
never mind, there's a war going on. Afghanistan's on fire.
Yeah,
that's freaking awesome.
But I think they loved it, and I was pretty adamant that I could do a better job than the leaders, that were currently in place, and that truly was my passion, because I saw guys getting mistreated, and there was not a lot of common sense with some of the crew that we had at the time. And so my desire, when I saw grown men and husbands and fathers being treated, in ways that I felt like they shouldn't have been, that I wanted to lead, and I wanted to lead, in a fair and just, manner. So
right,
yeah,
outstanding.
Yeah.
All right. So how so how many years did you actually spend there?
Yeah. So I did 3 years there, because my first year was basically, I would say, basic training. So my first year was basic training, airborne school, and then trying out for Ranger Battalion. So about 3 years I spent there at Ranger Training Brigade. So
okay,
and those 3 years went by pretty quick. Again, I had the opportunity to go through several schools, which the Lord's favor was on me, and was able to pass all the schools that I went to first time, and I appreciated that time. But then, man, when those 3 years came to a close, they really tried to keep me.
Oh heck yeah! I mean, whenever you sit there and you see a hard charger, a fast burner, those are the guys you want to keep. But obviously, sometimes those guys have different plans, and So all right, so you do 3 years.
Yeah.
So you decide you're going to get out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Total of 4, and by this time I had.
And what year is this that you're getting out?
This is 2006. 2006 is when I was getting out, and by this time I'd met my wife. I think we were married at that point.
Oh, so you got married while you were in the Army?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes,
what kind of a culture
married.
shock was that for her?
Yeah, so she had said that she would never even date someone that was in the military, but the Lord had other plans, and we see to this day why the Lord paired us up. And I still remember when I was dating her, I remember how difficult it was, because we were each other's first in so many areas and ways, and it was hard to date and to not know how to date, since we'd never done it before.
Right.
And I remember thinking, this is really difficult. I'm going to walk away from this. And the Lord said, no, this is the woman that I have for you. And in my heart, I was like, are you serious? And so I pursued her. And to this day, we are so grateful that the Lord spoke to me about that, because the crazy life that we both live now, I don't feel like you could find another person that would do it.
Gotcha.
And so I met her while I was in the military, probably towards the last year that I was in, and we had dated for about a year and a half, and had decided to get out of the military and try to start a family. And of course, that was the only duty station that I'd been to, and the only one I knew. And so later in life, I found out that the rest of the military can be different from just that isolated place. But yeah, decided to get out, and so that was my initial 4 years. But for those of you who have served, you know that when you sign your name on the dotted line, you can't just sign for 4 years. You sign for 8 years. And you ask yourself, how do you sign for 8 years and only do that many? It's just an unwritten obligation that if the military decides to call you back, they're entitled to for the extent of those 8 years. And so I got out after serving 4. We tried starting to have a family, and I started going to school to be a teacher because my wife was a teacher at the time.
Okay.
And we thought, man, if we both have the summers off, how much greater could life be?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we could do whatever we want. And so I started pursuing being a teacher, got my associate's degree after 2 years. And then I was washing the car in the driveway, and this guy comes up and hands me this FedEx envelope and says, "You need to sign for this." And I looked at the sender, and it said,
Uncle Sam?
Uncle Sam. And I said, "I know exactly what this is." And whoo, that was a big bomb to get dropped, that I got recalled for another year.
Wow.
To serve Uncle Sam, but this time he was calling me back to deploy overseas, and so
Okay.
yeah, big bomb for our new marriage and for the life that we had thought. So, you know, I was already signed up for classes and had to go withdraw from those classes.
What did Ashley say?
Man, we cried together, we prayed together, and it was a short turnaround too. It was you got 3 weeks to get your life in order. And
Oh, wow.
and then you're ours.
Okay.
And so it was a real fast turnaround. But man, we tried looking at it from all the different angles. Is there a way to get out of it? Like, we tried looking at that, and we tried appealing the fact that we were trying to start a family. We showed them evidence of that, and you know, Uncle Sam doesn't matter much.
No, he's going to get his pound of flesh.
Yeah,
and more.
If you've signed up for his service, then you're his service. So yeah. So
Okay.
so
So where did you go to sign in?
So I went to Texas to sign back in. I want to say it was
kidding me.
Killeen that I went to sign in. And they had to make sure that we were all squared away. You know, the military had gone from BDUs to ACUs, and they were also putting us with the only infantry reserve unit in the Army, and so they put us with that unit, and so they had to train us for the mission that they had for us. And even though we were infantry, they had to train us to be mounted, because that's how a lot of the I don't know what you'd call it, the missions were taking place there.
Gotcha.
We're all,
Okay.
you had to have some mounted training because you operated with Humvees that had weapons on them, and how to get those out of an ambush if it happened, and how to cover and maneuver, and you know, all that kind of stuff was different from what I'd trained from. I'm up, he sees me, I'm down,
Right.
bounding, you know, kind of thing. So covering and
What
bounding
infantryman doesn't want to ride, though?
yeah.
After all those years on your
That's
feet
it,
humping
yeah.
rock, and it's
Woo!
like, I get to go, I get to drive
Yeah,
someplace?
yeah,
Sign me up?
no.
Well, maybe not sign me up, but
yeah,
hook me up.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
okay, all right. So,
yeah.
all right. So what unit did they? What unit did you get hooked up with?
So it was the 442nd Infantry Division, and it was compiled of troops from Guam and America Samoa, and
So basically, all the Micronesia. The
yes,
Micronesian
yes,
islands.
yeah,
Nice.
and it was kind of based out of Hawaii,
Okay.
which, man, after deployment, all our meetings were in Hawaii, and they paid for plane tickets
Are you
because I
serious?
wasn't from Hawaii; they all were, and so yeah, I
Dude,
got
that's
to
awesome.
go to an all expenses paid, not vacation, to Hawaii afterwards, but
So the bulk
Yeah.
of them were Chamorros,
yeah,
Guamanians. Yeah, hafa day to you, to
Yeah.
all my former classmates out there.
yeah.
So
We you know, it was sweet to hear these guys. these guys had such rich heritage, and
Yeah.
and because they spoke another language, it was really sweet that they had these amazing cadences in their language, and it was really cool to hear these guys sing. Every single one of them was a singer, and that was really cool to see, man.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Until you have a conversation and they go Chamorro secure.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's, you know,
Yeah.
some of you guys will get that. The civilians is like, yeah, we're out there and we're working with Partner Nation. They speak Arabic. They go Arabic secure, and you don't know what to flip unless you got a guy that's language qualified that knows Arabic. It's like,
Yeah.
what are they talking about?
Yeah.
I got no idea. So, same way with Chamorro. Nice. So where'd you guys end up going?
We went to Kuwait. We were stationed in Kuwait.
Okay.
And our job was to provide convoy security for all of the goods that were being transported up into Iraq. And so we would prepare and inspect these large convoys of 40, 18 wheelers, like
wow.
going north, and we would have 4 gun trucks that would protect these 40 big rigs going north. And so it was our running joke that we were risking our lives so the guys up north could have ice cream. And but it was anything from gas to food to supplies and stuff like that. And so we provided security for them, and it was my job to run the lead vehicle and to talk to all the landowners and incoming convoys and make sure that we were all secure and call out potential threats and stuff like that. So
Okay. So
that was my job.
how far north would you go? Baghdad?
Baghdad
or
was
north?
the furthest north that I went.
Okay.
But we took a trip to Baghdad, but most of our trips were pretty routine. And to this point, I really think I can't even remember which bases we went to. We went to a lot of bases, but it was usually about an 8 to 10 hour drive at night, and it was the same drive. And so it was good in the fact that we could recognize new hazards, like other new material that's been laid, fresh dug dirt,
Right.
that might be a potential threat. But it was hard in the fact that it was nighttime and we were driving 8 to 10 hours, and it got pretty monotonous. And so, yeah, it was tough. It was really tough. And I think one of the things I'm grateful for, a couple of them, is the fact that the Lord protected my mind. Before I went over, I was actually excited to get to do the job that I'd trained for in those first 4 years as an infantryman. I never deployed, and so I was actually excited to get to deploy and to know what it felt like to deploy, and then to use the skills that I'd been trained in. But I had this chaplain pray for me, and I remember distinctly him praying, I pray that Curtis never has to see combat and that he never has to take someone's life. And I thought to myself, what am I desiring? And it changed my whole perspective on the deployment, from me desiring to get to do my job and to get to put forth those skills, to now it was, man, Lord, would you protect my mind? Lord, would you keep me from having to take someone else's life? And we had other guys that had their convoys hit, and we had the guys before us had lost guys. The guys that immediately replaced us got hit immediately, like within 1 or 2 weeks of us
wow.
leaving and transferring it over to their hands. But man, praise God, we had our guys, their heads were on a swivel. We changed up our patterns. We did everything we could to make sure all our guys got home safely. And the most we had was just indirect fire that was non-effective. And
Right.
so, praise God, he kept me safe. He kept my mind safe. You know, I've got some PTSD from a little bit of those hairy events, but
Right.
but nothing that's that really keeps me awake at night. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
No, that's
Yeah.
hey, take the blessings where you can get them for
Right.
sure.
Right.
So so that deployment goes. I mean, obviously you're still on high alert. Obviously
Yeah.
you're doing your job, and so you get through that deployment without any incident. How does that deployment close down? Now, what did you spend? Okay, so
yeah.
the activation was for a year, or the deployment was for a year?
The activation was for a year. The deployment was probably about 10 months.
Okay.
I want to say it was about 10 months. So I was pretty much recalled for about a year.
Okay.
So,
So when you come home,
yeah.
you know, how does that go, transitioning back to civilian life?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to transition back from being in that state of just being hyper vigilant and feeling like everything's a threat when you get back. And I remember this is one of the things that I feel like the Lord helped me in so much, because I remember being on extreme alert all the time, and I didn't used to carry a weapon beforehand, and then afterwards I started carrying concealed, and I would carry concealed. I would carry multiple weapons, and there were a lot of places that I had hesitation going into, and it was always planning and strategizing, how am I going to get out of this if and when the threat comes, and it was a hard place to be in, where I really struggled to function, especially at church, because church was just a larger group of people. I typically had to sit with my back facing the doors, and so that, you know, it was difficult. I felt very vulnerable, and the Lord took that from me. I specifically prayed, and He convicted me that I was not trusting my safety to Him, and it's not for everybody. But the Lord asked me to give up my weapons and to trust Him completely. And I remember being asked, "Are you sure this is what you want to do?" when I was trading my guns in, and
Right.
And I said, "You know, this is what the Lord's asked me to do, and I'm going to obey Him in this." And I remember after giving that over to the Lord, I had never felt that kind of freedom before.
Gotcha.
I felt so safe, and I felt such peace just washing over me. And even to this day, I have a hard time carrying concealed, and I have on occasion, but I feel like the Lord's hand has given me that peace, and the Lord has allowed me to be at peace when not protecting myself. And it's just the most encouraging thing to know that I have a God who holds me in His hand, and as the Bible talks about, like, He is my strong tower and He is my refuge.
Right.
And so yeah, that's been one of the sweetest gifts that He's given me.
Well, good deal.
Yeah.
So you get back, you're making your adjustment back to civilian life.
Yeah.
Army's not paying your bills anymore.
No, yeah.
So
They warned me about that.
yeah, one day that check's not
Yeah.
coming.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? Because now you're,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, obviously when you're in school, you know, you don't have a job so there's no USERRA rights. That's where basically the military protects your job, so you've got a job to come back to.
Yeah.
What do you, what's the next step?
Yeah. And you know, they did tell me it's going to be hard. You shouldn't get out because the civilian world's hard. But I thought, man, there's got to be a way. There's so many other people that do it, right? There's civilians out there.
Yeah.
They're doing it. And so
they're like 99% of the population.
99% of the population is doing it. I don't understand what's so hard about it. But my wife and I were determined to take that route and to see where that road led. And so when I got out, my desire was to find something that was as enriching to my soul as the military was, because I felt such good camaraderie with the guys in the groups there. And I wanted that same thing in the civilian world. And so a couple things I was entertaining was being a cop and being a firefighter.
Okay.
And one of those professions, both of them actually, you get waved at, but one of them, typically the waving's done with a middle finger, and the other one is done with all five. And so I thought, man, it would be a little more rewarding to go in as a firefighter and be able to provide that level of care. And so that's the route that I went after a lot of prayer. My wife and I pursued that, and the Lord was kind and allowed me to do that, and I did that for about 8.5 years. I was a firefighter and a paramedic in Fort Walton Beach.
Okay.
I'm a career firefighter.
Nice.
Make that distinction, but yeah, it was good, and honestly, I had a lot of job satisfaction in being a paramedic. That was, to me, one of the sweetest jobs that I've done, apart from the job that I do now. But to get to care for people in their greatest moment of distress after they've called 911 was so sweet. And the Lord even grew me during that time in boldness. And I would have opportunities to pray with my patients, which my other buddies, my other firefighters would be a little surprised at and hesitant to do, but the Lord had called me to do that, and so that was just really sweet that He called me to step out in boldness during that career field, and so I got to experience a growing in boldness there, and that was really sweet. Yeah, so about 8.5 years went by of me doing that, and in that time, my wife and I had pursued starting a family, and the Lord called us on a mission trip to Haiti towards adoption, and we said, Lord, if that's your will, we would be willing to follow you to that, because one of the things that we found is the only place to be is in the Lord's will. Aside from being in the Lord's will, you're going to be running, and it is not going to be easy. And even in the Lord's will, it's not going to be easy. But to know that the Lord is with you is what's comforting. And so we took a step of faith and said, okay, Lord, we will follow your leading in adoption. And where do you want us to adopt from, Lord? And He said, from an overseas country, which I'm going to fail to mention that just to protect my kids. But I was going to school. I was back in school at the time, and my wife was teaching, and so we didn't make a lot of money to adopt from overseas, and we didn't have a lot of family support during that, and so we said, Lord, it's up to you to bring our kids home. And the Lord did what only the Lord can do, and He provided the means necessary to bring them home. But it was not until after a long time, and in that waiting, the Lord really convicted Ashley's and my heart about waiting for this fulfillment of His promise to come to us, and He said, I have asked you to care for my orphans, and I know I've asked you to adopt, but how are you caring for my orphans in the meantime? And so we were very convicted in that and started getting into foster care. And that's where, man, I feel like the Lord's growth really just took an upward progression in a very fast manner. And so, waiting 3 years to bring our kids home, I feel like it was probably about year 1 or 1.5 when he called us to really truly follow through with caring for the orphans in foster care.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, do you? And I don't want to, infringe on your privacy too much. Obviously, a podcast, we're getting into some private matters.
Yeah.
Do you want to get into maybe a little bit, or even just kind of touch a little bit on why? Obviously, when God compels you to do something, you act.
Right.
Right. But from what I remember, you guys couldn't have children, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're dealing with infertility issues, right? Okay.
Right.
How did you guys walk through that? Because there's couples out there that are working through infertility.
Right.
And I want to be very clear on this.
Yeah.
Adoption isn't just your backstop. It's not your plan B.
Yeah, let me hit on that.
Yeah, please.
Because one of the things my wife and I had tried, I'm trying to think how long it had been. It had been a hard road, and we had worked towards trying to biologically have children on our own for probably, I want to say 4 years.
Okay.
I want to say 4 years. I could be wrong in that, but I want to say 4 years. And we'd seen doctors, and the doctors had all said, I don't know why you can't have children. There is no physical reason why you should not be able to have children. And so they all had their theories on, well, if you did this and if you did that, and maybe this will work and maybe that'll work, but physically, scientifically, you should be able to have children. And now we know why we weren't able to have children.
Yeah.
We really believe that the Lord had intentionally closed my wife's womb so that we would see his heart in adoption.
Okay.
And so we started pursuing adoption, but now after having adopted many children, we look back and we say, man, if we could have gone back, we would have saved ourselves the time, and not just for time's sake, but because we see that adoption is not this second rate or a backstop type of thing, but that it is a beautiful thing. And even going into foster care, I think that's when my eyes were opened as far as what adoption truly is, because I remember thinking, these are not my children, these are someone else's children. I am going to give them as much love as I can, and I'm going to pray that the Lord does a work in my heart, and that I'll be able to love them appropriately in what they need, in all the areas that they need. And I remember the first child that walked through that door, and my heart just broke and melted, and the Lord showed me that this was his child, and any biological kids we would have had was his child also. And so the family that he provides, however he provides it, is simply something that we get to be entrusted with.
Right.
And he entrusted us with these kids, and man, these kids are as good as my wife and I could have ever imagined them being. And to some degree, I would even argue that I love these kids more simply because, man, the Lord put that desire in our heart for us to pursue these kids. It wasn't an accidental child, which, man, the Lord knows what He's doing even then, and to give children, despite birth control and despite these other means, that those children are blessings, and every single child that is brought into a home is such a blessing and a gift from God. And I feel like, man, the Lord has showed me that adoption is so sweet.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
Sweet. And just the picture that we have of us being adopted as children is so sweet, because the Lord talks about how, because we were broken in our sin and this separation happened where our sin separated us from a perfectly holy and righteous God, and in His love for us, He sent His only Son to die and to give us that gift of grace, if we choose that His blood can actually adopt us back into the fold, is so sweet. And so I think it's because of that example too that we just have such a passion and love for adoption. So,
well, yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. I mean, adoption is the gospel.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
And the thing is, you know, yeah, because I mean, like you said, we're grafted in, and
Yeah.
and that's amazing. And let's not forget, you know, there's going to be, you know, a lot of our buddies go to church. A lot of our
Yeah.
buddies are Christians.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people listening to this that are Christians, and I would encourage, and we'll get back to your story, but I would encourage, you know, James flat out says, pure and undefiled religion is this,
Yeah.
that you take care of the widow
Yeah.
and the orphan in their time of need.
Yeah.
And yet in our churches, and I challenge you guys out there
Yeah.
to take a look at your congregation. What is it? Orphan Care Sunday in November is usually the only time that the topic of adoption comes up.
Yeah.
Shame on us.
Yeah.
Shame on the church for not making that an every Sunday topic, because we're all adopted.
Yeah.
So I won't belabor that. We'll probably go back to that topic again here later on. But I really want, you know, our friends out there to be thinking about that, as to, hey, you know, everybody's called to be involved in orphan care and in adoption and in fostering. But and it's scary. Holy cow!
Yeah.
The horror stories.
Yeah.
But you know, and that's just being brutally honest. But you know what? On the other side,
Right.
oh my gosh,
Right.
it's amazing. Love is a choice.
Yeah.
Flat out, love is a choice.
And you talk to our kids, and our kids would say, and it's been so sweet to hear them pray, in the fact that one of the things that they have appreciated through adoption is this intentionality that my wife and I have had of pointing them towards the Lord, and not that we have opened their eyes to their need for forgiveness and for the Lord in their life, but that the Lord has in that. And so it's so sweet that coming into our home, like that, they've gotten to see that gospel lived out and loved out, and it's really sweet that that's the case.
All right, so so we go through being a firefighter.
Yeah.
The call of adoption is heavy on your heart. You guys end up adopting.
Yeah.
Or you're doing foster care.
Right.
I do want to give one plug for fostering, because I used to think this very thing, and my wife, let's face it, the majority of guys that are listening to this, we probably have 90% of us have married up.
Yeah.
I I remember thinking, hey, I'm not about fostering. I'm not going to do that because I don't want somebody, after I invest in a child, I do not want somebody taking that kid away. It'll break my heart.
Yeah.
And Mary one day told me flat out, if it doesn't hurt, you're not doing it right.
Yep.
And it was like,
yeah.
holy,
That makes
holy cow.
perfect sense.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
It's like,
yeah. If it doesn't break your heart, then you didn't love as hard as you could.
Yeah,
and those children deserve love and everything.
So I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
My wife put me in my place again. I'm feeling that big.
Right.
But so we're gonna press. So adoption happens.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
how many? Well, you guys adopted internationally,
right?
Much like we did on our first go around,
right?
How does that go down once they get to the house? I mean, because that is a major paradigm shift, and it's not. It's not, oh, gee, I get a baby and we get to grow together and learn this thing together. It's like, congratulations.
Right.
You're getting, a kid that's already, is 5, 8, 10 years old. I don't know.
And keep in mind that we didn't have any kids. My wife and I didn't have any kids at this point. And so, do we really know how to be parents? I mean, we cared for other kids and we babysat and watched other kids, and we were involved in the youth ministry at our church and everything like that. So we knew kids, but we'd never been parents, and it's different because sometimes you have the privilege of having a baby and growing through that. Okay, now they meet another milestone. How do I handle this milestone? But sometimes when you adopt and it's an older child, which in this case, ours were about 7 and 5.
Okay.
When they eventually came home, it was about 4 and 2 when we got matched up. But we are supposed to be sending them this information on what they can expect when they come to our home. That way it makes that transition process a little bit easier. So we would send them books that had pictures of their rooms prepared and like their stuffed animals in the bed that they'll be sleeping in and their pets, any pets in the home and things like that they could kind of mentally start preparing for, because for those of you who've been in a different country, especially in some of these third world countries, know that the lifestyle that we live as 1%ers is completely different.
Yes.
And so this environment that they're coming into is going to just be a shock, complete shock to them. And so we tried our best to prepare. But one of the things that we didn't prepare for was how the Lord was calling us into foster care. And so we sent our kids, our future kids from overseas, all the things they could anticipate. And when they got home 3 years later, I mean, y'all know about how much 3 years can change your life.
Oh, yeah.
Our lives were completely different. We lived in a new house. We actually had 3 kids already when they came home, and so it was a little bit different than expected. But again, one of the things that comes with adoption and with foster care is additional challenges, because these children did not grow up in your home under your protection, under your watchful eye. Eating the foods you eat and all these additional things. And so there are a lot of other challenges that come into play. So.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
So the other kiddos, I did not realize I knew we were getting close to Milton, but I didn't realize we're in Milton. So we'll be heading back east, I'm sorry. But Yeah, so the dude, that's amazing. So the other kiddos, so you already had the 3 kiddos domestically from after the there we go. Just remembering my way around here. So yeah, that's crazy. So at this point, okay, so adoption is now a part of this whole thing. What are you doing for a job now? Because I'm thinking at this point, are you still at the fire department? Have you left the fire department? What?
Yeah, so I'm still at the fire department now. I'm probably in, I've got to be in like year 5 or 6 maybe.
Okay.
Maybe it was earlier than that. But yeah, I'm at the fire department, which also presents a challenge because those of you who've done shift work before know that it can be a sweet opportunity to do things together as a family, set up vacations as you have those days off. And one of the things that we did was we had shift work for 2 days on, 4 days off. And so those 4 days were really sweet. But the 2 days on were very difficult for my wife, especially in the fact that we still had an open home and we were still doing foster care and we were still accepting placements. And so sometimes we would have new placements placed in our home for our care on that first day that I was gone. And so my wife would be home with all the kids and the challenges of new kids that came with challenges to care for herself. And the only thing that I could do to care for her was to stay on the phone with her and to encourage her and love her and provide every encouraging thing that I could do from the phone, including calling in a meal or whatever for her. And that was the most that I could help out with. And so that was a real big challenge. And that eventually is kind of what led us to start looking at other options that we could continue doing this same work and still and maybe provide for the kids on a better level.
Right.
So
gotcha. Yeah. All right. So that's tough. I mean, foster and adoption is difficult enough, but when you're on a schedule like that, and now you have one parent pretty much almost out of the picture, that can
completely
be,
out of the mix. Yeah.
That's dang.
Yeah.
So, all right. So going from there, you're with the fire department. At some point, you're getting your degree, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Started going back to school for nursing. So that was one of the sweet things, was that I felt like that was the next step up. I'd been an EMT, which is an emergency medical technician, which provides basic life-saving on an ambulance, basic life-saving on a fire truck, and is able to assist a paramedic in caring for a patient. And then I decided, man, that's not good enough. I want to be in there. I want to be doing the things. I want to be administering the medication and providing that level of higher care for the patient, because I always feel like if there's more that I can give, more that could be done, that's what I want to do. And so I went to paramedic school, which again was really sweet because we didn't have a family really at the time. And so for me to be all in, doing all these clinical rotations on ambulances and in emergency rooms and stuff like that, it was sweet to not have that obligation of caring for a child and still needing to tuck someone in at night. And so the Lord, allowed me to do that during that time. And so we started looking at nursing, because nursing is that kind of next level after being a paramedic, and it opens up these different doors, because as a nurse, you can be an in-home nurse, you can work in a doctor's office, you can work in a hospital. There's so many different doors that open up for you as a nurse. And so I started looking at that, and my work with the shift work actually allowed for me to do that. And I had saved up a lot of leave, and even for some of the courses I was able to switch shifts with other guys. And so I really worked it out that last year that I was at the fire department with a lot of the guys that hooked me up and were able to care well for me during that time. And I still was able to work full-time at the fire department, go to school full-time for nursing, and care for the family, which, again, looking back, one of the things that we hope that our kids will see in the future is that if the Lord calls you to something, that there's nothing that can keep you back from it, because He'll provide a way for what He calls you for, whether it's for adoption, whether it's for foster care. One of the things the Lord does is He equips you for the task that He calls you for.
Yeah, He does.
And so not to be scared if the Lord calls you to go be a missionary in Indonesia or China or a place like Iraq or Iran. Go do what He's called you to do, because He'll equip you and He'll pave the way, and it's always and only for His glory. And so, man, I would encourage you in that, but we wanted our kids to be able to see that. And so the Lord equipped me and gave me He sustained me all those late nights of working 2 days on at the fire department, and then 2 days on full-time student, and then doing clinical rotations, all while caring for my wife and family. And so He was so good to allow me to do that. And so we started pursuing that while I was still at the fire department, and I think it was about a year that I did school for while I was there.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
yeah.
Gotcha. So you roll out of being a firefighter into becoming a nurse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. If there's anything I'm missing in there, fill in. By all means, fill in the blanks. So, what a resume to go from the Army
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
studying to become a teacher
Right.
to a deployment in Iraq to firefighting to transitioning to becoming a nurse
Yeah.
in the middle of fostering and adopting.
Yeah.
I thought my life was crazy. Holy
it's nuts.
cow, man.
But this was one of the cool things, and one of the things that I really wrestled with, because one thing that I think our society and our culture gets wrapped up in is we get wrapped up in our identity is in what we do. And so one of the opening lines whenever you first meet someone is, what is it you do? What work are you in? And that's kind of how we typically identify ourselves.
Yeah.
And so the Lord really challenged me in this, because I thought, man, I'm this bad dude who's like got all these skills, and I got an extensive military resume, and then that was gone, and I'm no longer that guy. And now I'm going to school to be a teacher, and I go from being that guy to a teacher. How do I do that? And so I got to switch my mindset, and then to go into being a firefighter and a paramedic. And it was when I graduated paramedic school, the Lord called me not just to do foster care, but He specifically called me to do what they call a group home parent. And so it was this full-time position where you would care for kids in the foster home, in a home that they provided, and it was typically about 4 to 8 kids, but you would be basically you would fill the role as a parent for that home, and you would care for those kids, provide for those kids, but then at the end of the night you would go home and a different parent would take over, kind of thing. And I thought, well, what in the world? I just did a whole year of learning as a paramedic. And that was like the most taxing time of my life. And I thought, for what end? If I'm going to give that up to be this group home parent. And I wrestled with that for probably a good month.
Okay.
Until I finally said, Lord, if that's what you're calling me to, then I'm willing to give up this credential that you've provided for. And if that is the testimony that you want me to have, that you are worth me giving all that time and all that up, then that's what you deserve. But it took me, in my hard-headedness, probably at least a month to wrestle with that. And when I finally said yes, he said, all right, that's all I needed to know, is that I was your everything. And so, yeah, that was kind of where the turning point was for that. So,
okay.
Yeah. So pursued nursing. What was the question again?
Oh no, we were just going through the different occupations that you had.
That's right.
I vaguely remembered something about you considering doing that.
Yeah.
And I completely brain dumped that.
Yeah. And so I think that's where I was going with this, was that in all that, the Lord has really challenged me in where's my identity. Because if the military wasn't my identity, and teaching wasn't my identity, and all these other things weren't my identity, then where's my identity?
Yeah.
And so my identity has to rest in the Lord. Otherwise, I'd be a confused individual. And so to realize that the Lord is my everything, and really, truly, when you get down to it, who am I? Is I am a child of God, made by God, for His glory, and that is it, and that is everything. And so it doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't matter what job I fill, it doesn't matter where society would place that job. Whatever job it is a job that's to be done for His glory and just all to Him. And
right.
So, man, I'm grateful that the Lord has brought me through all those aspects just so I can be able to understand who I am and what my worth is in Him.
Right.
And so,
right.
Yeah.
One of the things whenever I first started this podcast, and I've since changed it, but it revolved around, we always hear body, mind, and spirit, and I would switch it to spirit, body, and mind.
Yeah.
And a lot of it being the spirit, for us, obviously it's our relationship with Christ.
Yeah.
But that transcendent cause for those guys that, that don't subscribe to a relationship with God. Hey, what is that? Where do you find your identity? And obviously for us, I think it's so much easier.
Right.
But guys struggle with their identity. So tying this into veterans.
Yeah.
Because I remember one time you and me had a conversation.
Yeah.
And coming up, in the infantry and all that, you don't talk about, hey, I'm hurting, or you don't talk about, hey, I just cranked my freaking foot, unless it's obvious and somebody says, hey, Sergeant Major says, go get that checked out. I remember one time I had to jump, and I had an enormous pop in my back, my upper back, and I was, and the Sergeant Major's chewing my butt because I'm the last guy coming off of the drop zone. And I'm like, and he's screaming at me. I'm like, Sergeant Major, I heard a pop, and he's like, Gah! Put it down, put down the rucksack, put down the parachute bag, and I'm like, what do you want me to do, Sergeant Major? He, go to the ambulance, and but we don't.
Right.
So you and me had that conversation because your VA was, let's face it, in the freaking toilet.
Right.
And so when you finally did get stuff done, and I want to talk to you because there's some guys out there that are still like, dude, there's guys that are blown up. I've never been blown up. There's guys that have been shot out there.
Right.
What how did all that change for you whenever I started prodding you on that stuff? Because there's guys out there that need to get with the VA and get their benefits.
Right. I feel like, just like kind of we talked about how when you sign your name, that you now belong to Uncle Sam for those 8 years or however long you signed for, in that contract is that Uncle Sam will care for you. And you need to understand that this is a two-way contract. This is not just something that you need to fulfill, but that they need to fulfill as well. And so when you fulfill your side of the contract and you give them that time and you give yourself in that time, that if there was anything broken, if there was anything hurt during that time that you gave yourself to him, that he is obligated to continue his care for you in that. And so just in that contract, not only does he owe it to you, but you also owe it to yourself to care well for yourself in pursuing that. And I know just through the compensation or even the medical care, the continued care that I get now, that's the best that I can give my wife. That's the best that I can give my kids. And if I don't pursue that, then I'm doing my kids, I'm doing my wife a disservice, I'm doing myself a disservice, because now I have to live in that hurt, I have to live with that PTSD, I have to live with all these other aspects that may be broken or damaged to some degree. And again, we have to get away from that thinking of just it's not as bad as everyone else is who's getting that compensation, to is it probably because I jumped out of airplanes? Is it probably because I wore a rucksack where the frame broke because of the amount of weight that I was carrying?
Yeah, maybe just a little bit.
Yeah, and so I remember turning my rucksack frame in and after Ranger School, and they said, "You're going to need to pay for this because it's broken." And I said, "Absolutely not." The amount of weight that I was carrying, this thing was not made for. And so understanding the what Uncle Sam demands and takes from you is what you signed up for, but they signed up to care for you in the aftermath of it. And so just pursuing that in your best interest and in your family's best interest is good and well. Nicely articulated.
Yeah. You know what? That's my new pitch.
Yeah.
When I'm talking to guys, is that two-way contract. Okay, right. I'm going to get personal here.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to answer, you have to answer.
Yeah.
When I spoke to you, you were sitting at 10%, 20%.
Yeah.
All right, and then you know it. Okay, so that guys can conceptualize this, because we're thick-headed, and some of us are just freaking dumb.
Right.
I might be.
Right.
What after you finally committed and started getting the paperwork done? What did you get bumped up to?
Yeah. So right now I'm sitting at 50%, which again, I don't know how the military does its math, because when I add it up, it's 60. Yeah. But when they add it up, it's 50. And so I don't know if they're thinking 10% for that knee, 10% for that knee. Well, they're both knees, so let's just call it 10% across the board.
Right.
That's what I think they're thinking. But when I got out of the military, I got a sheet, and again, it wasn't something that I even processed, because the VA was not great at that time. Now I feel like it's better. But in that time, it was, you know what? It's not even worth my fight. It's not worth my time. Also,
and you're young and you're bulletproof.
And that's the thing. Also, now I really don't feel the effects of the hurt knees, the hurt back, the jumps, all that kind of stuff. I don't feel the effects of it. But 10 years later, you start feeling it, and then 20 years later, you're like, something's messed up, man. Yeah. And I know I hadn't done a lot of, rucking since the military, and so I think I know where it happened. And so recognizing that, the military gave me a sheet of paper, and this was without me even pursuing any of these things, or even trying to play this game of well, I think if I say this or that, but they said, we're responsible for this, we're responsible for this, we recognize that we're responsible for no cartilage under your knees, the deviated septum, hurt back, hurt neck, hurt shoulders. Like we recognize that we're responsible for all this stuff. We hereby award you 0%. And that was it. I had a sheet that said, we hereby award you 0%. And I said, yeah, I don't understand that. Whatever.
Yeah.
And I left it at that. But yeah, after talking to you, I thought, you know what? I probably should revisit this. And so I revisited it. And yeah, the military has since, just with me asking them to look into it further, has given me 50%. And
nice.
So yeah, I'm grateful for that. And yeah, anything additional is the kindness of the Lord given to me. But you know, I don't depend on it. I don't need it. I don't want it. But do I feel like it's owed? If they recognize that, then yeah, I do. So, but yeah, the Lord is so kind to have given me that, and let me tell you, that's really helpful. And on top of that, is if recognized as being disabled, there's other things that are placed on that too, as far as like dependents. If you have dependents, you get paid for dependents.
Yeah.
You have access to the military facilities, which means that you have access to the military hospitals and doctors and the base amenities and stuff like that. And so it really is sweet to see that the military can follow through with that contract if pressed.
Yeah.
And so
yeah. So no, that's awesome. And there's a lot of guys out there that, you know, are probably thinking, hey, I need to go back, and you know,
yeah.
And so yeah, thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, I think for the most part we have pretty much covered everything. What I do want to touch base with, and I know when we start talking about, you know, our families, the size of our families and all that, hey, that can get, you know, this stuff is going out,
right,
you know, onto the internet. So
right.
One thing that, you know, obviously, you know, a lot of guys out there know, hey, I've got 6 bio kids.
Right.
You know, me and my wife had all boys. That's not why we adopted. We didn't adopt to get the girl that we could never get.
Right.
God laid it on our heart, you know, and from when I met Mary, you know, when we started dating back in 92.
Yeah.
You know, I always knew I wanted to adopt. And Mary, I didn't realize it was a deal breaker. If I didn't have a heart for adoption, I was going to get kicked to the curb.
Right.
And so we started talking about this, and we didn't know what it would look like, you know, 15 years into the future,
right,
or whatever. And so anyway, it was on our minds. I grew up an only child. It sucked. I hated it.
Yeah.
I wanted siblings, and you know, it just didn't happen. So we wanted a large family. When we started adopting, you know, it was life-changing. When we started fostering, it was even more life-changing, because you're, you know, these kids you have for a finite period of time.
Right.
We've been fortunate that we've been able to adopt all of our children that we've fostered. I say all that to say, okay, we live in a country that is, I think, #1 in human trafficking.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure those are the stats now. A movie came out a year ago called, I don't know if it was The Sound of Liberty.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sound of Liberty, I think.
Great movie.
Freedom.
Caviezel, you know, starred in that. I forget what the guy's name is. That's not important. But it talks about that guy's life and his pursuit of freeing children from bondage.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's, you know, being trafficked, sex trafficked, or even if it's child labor. The front lines, everybody wants to be that guy that kicks in the door and rescues kids. I get it.
Right.
you and me, if we could be there, would be doing that stuff.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, and I want you guys to think about this, the trenches is in the foster care system. The trenches is getting out there with kids that are vulnerable, which foster children are, kids in the foster system. We as a nation, we as a church, we as a community need to start getting in the trenches with these kiddos. And you know what? Me and we talked earlier about it, how people will sit there and, oh, you're so special for what you're doing. I could never do it. Bull crap.
Yeah.
Every one of us is equipped to do that to some level. Not everybody needs to adopt.
Yeah.
You know, but let's face it. I'm not special. You're not special.
Right.
God laid this on our hearts, and this is what we do as Christians. You got any thoughts? Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like, again, going back to the fact that He equips you for what He asks you to do. He doesn't always ask you for what He's already equipped you to do. We see that, in His Word, where He asked Moses to go be His spokesman, and Moses said, well, I got a problem stuttering, and and the Lord was like, don't worry about it, like, I got you, man. And it's the same case, I think, with being a foster parent or being an adoptive parent. Is the Lord says, these are my children, they need to be cared for, I want you to care for them. And you say, okay, Lord, I don't know how, but would you give me the wisdom? And He says, absolutely, because the Lord so desires to give wisdom. And so just understanding that nothing that we do or anything like that has ever come from us is the truth, because really what it comes down to is the Lord doing a work in me. I've gotten to see the Lord change me from what I used to be. When I started as a parent, there was still those selfish motives in my life that man, I just wanted to do all the vacations. I wanted to go to Greece, and I wanted to do all these things and vacation with my wife, and then I also struggled with anger and impatience. But now I'm a perfect guy. No, I'm just kidding.
I still struggle with that stuff.
No, I still struggle with that stuff, but not to the same degree. And I've gotten to see the Lord calm my spirit and to take me from those places where someone can say, man, you used to be in the military. I could never really tell that, because the Lord has changed the way I speak. The things that I idolize and stuff are completely different. Now I seek and desire Him, but to know that the Lord is the one who does the work and not you is so comforting, because it takes all the stress, all the pressure off of you. I know for my wife and I, one of the things that we have gotten to see the Lord work in is just how large our family is. Our family is extremely large. The Lord has blessed us in the fact that we have not had any biological children. And so all of our kids are adopted. All our kids share the same story, so we can easily say no child is, different than another one. And in that, they each can bond with each other, knowing that they have come from similar backgrounds and stuff. And so that's been really special. But yeah, the Lord grew our family at a rapid pace. He called us to adoption, and then in the waiting, called us to do foster care. And in the first year of us having children, I think we had either 3 or 5. And so we went from having no children to, I think it was 3. Second year, it was 5 or 7. And then the third year, 10. And the Lord has almost doubled that now.
The third year?
Yes. The third year we were at 10. And let me tell you, it is only the Lord, because as we would get out of a vehicle, we would take inventory of our children, as every parent does, whether 1, 2...
Head count.
Yeah, head count. Yeah, here's the choke point right here, right? And we would take inventory, and we would go, is this everyone? Are you sure this is everyone? It seems small. And in those moments, the Lord would be like, you're right, it is small. Let me add some more. And then we would feel like, oh, Lord, we need you so much because we don't know how to parent this many. And then a couple months later, is this it? Only 12? Are you sure this is it? No, that's not it. Let me add some more, right? And in the Lord's faithfulness, He's brought us to, 18 kids. So we have 18 kids. And
I don't do public math. I lose count with
Right.
my kids. I don't really, oh man.
But the sweetest thing is that the Lord has allowed for both my wife and I now to be stay-at-home parents. And so now both of us get to stay at home and care well for our kids. And we've gotten to see how my wife being a teacher comes into play as we homeschool our kids. Me having that medical background comes into play as we care well for our kids. And then both of us being home in order to just heap love on our kids. The Lord is so kind to have allowed us that. And in all of that picture, we can look at it and say, it's not from me, because there is absolutely no way that me as a person could care for this family that the Lord has entrusted to us. It is only Him. And I think He does that in those ways so that He can receive all the glory, because all the glory belongs to Him and should be given to Him. And so I think there are those times like in our family where He just says, I'm going to take some glory here and I'm going to give them a large number. That way they can only say my name when they talk about their family.
Yeah.
And so the Lord is so good, and we have gotten to see how He's provided from the house that He's given us to the bus we drive. And yes, we do drive a school bus. So He is so kind. He has provided.
You're a
such
bad
a
influence
nice
on my
one.
wife.
Yeah.
Because Mary's like, I'm ready for another bus.
Yeah.
I don't want another bus, but you know
Yeah.
what? There's a bus
Right.
somewhere in her future.
Yep.
That
It's
was
so
so
good,
cool.
man. We can walk down the aisle, we can pass out snacks and correction as needed. So it is, it is really sweet. And the sweet thing, one of the sweetest sights that I recall is looking down that bus and seeing it filled with booster seats and just all the little car seats, just filling it. And to drop it off at the mechanic, and they look in there and they go, what in the world is this? And to just be like, man, let me tell you what it is. You know, the Lord is so kind. And so, yeah, He is so good. And may my life just continue to be a testimony of Him and His greatness.
Oh, there's definitely times where, I've been distressed, I've been bummed out, because once again, people want to put you on a pedestal, and it's like,
Yeah.
there's so many times where where I'd run into you, and it was just your charisma, and I've even seen you when you're not, when you're, I've seen you when
Downcast.
but you're you've always got an awesome outlook. You're always positive, and it's genuine. It's not okay. Hey, I've got this facade to put up.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of perspective and just being grounded.
Yeah.
And the Lord has a way of doing that, especially with children. So,
Yeah.
dude, I love doing this podcast with you. This is freaking awesome.
Yeah, man.
We're about to wrap this baby up. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've reconsidered maybe what foster and adoption might look in your home, in your church, in your community. On top of that, I hope you can maybe if you are a man of faith, or if you're a woman of faith and you watch this, I hope that maybe that gives you some encouragement, and maybe makes you want to reevaluate some things as far as your walk with God.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't a religious podcast. However, you know, it reflects our faith, my faith, and Curtis's.
Yeah.
So hopefully this has been a good podcast for you.
Yeah.
So anyway, once again, guys, thanks for hanging out with us. It's been 2 hours. I need to write my gas off. But it's been 2 hours. It's been a great 2 hours.
Yeah.
And once again, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share this video, and once again, love you guys. Thanks for hanging with us, and stay tuned for the next stay tuned for the next episode, whatever that is. Woo! So, see you guys later. Take care.
Yeah.
See ya.